Welcome to a special edition of Plugged In, our podcast by OREMC about our co-op, our community, and our shared connections. Today, we're going to talk about storm preparedness, and we've had several lessons learned over the past year, given we made it through a tropical storm, 2 hurricanes, and an ice storm. So while we've talked about what you need to have in the past, we thought, given what we've been through, it was a good time to kind of do a refresh, focus on some things that maybe we didn't talk about in the past, and just be a good reminder of some of the basics as we get to the height of hurricane season, and you never know what could be coming down the pipeline in the winter months. So let's talk about the basics. And the basics are we need to move beyond the Pop-Tart. Now, Pop-Tarts, as you may know, there was a report back in the early 2000s that strawberry Pop-Tarts were the #1 item purchased in Florida Walmarts in advance of an approaching storm. Why? Well, they got a long shelf life, they're easy to eat, you don't have to have a toaster or a toaster oven to heat them up, so they're a great thing to have on hand to keep yourself nourished during a long or extended power outage. But there's so much more that we need to talk about than just Pop-Tarts. So the recommendations from CDC, Red Cross, ready.gov, all of them say you need to have at least a 3-day supply of food and water for each person in your family. Now, when it comes to water, we're talking a gallon of water per person per day. Now, it may seem like a lot, but better to be safe than sorry, because as we look at Helene, we were without power for 5 days across our service territory, but some of our co-op sisters around us were out for weeks at a time. So while 3 days is the minimum, 7 days is what you should put into practice. Have enough food and water for every member of your family for 7 days, whether you're going to shelter in place, meaning you're going to stay at home, or you're going to pick up stakes and go someplace else. So you may be in a hotel that has power, but you don't know what the restaurant situations are going to be. So you want to be able to be self-sufficient for a period of time. So what do you need to keep in mind? So we talked about the water, we talked about Pop-Tarts, but you need to think of things that are easy to eat and have that long shelf life. So fig bars are always a good item, peanut butter jelly and crackers, peanut butter, bread so you can make sandwiches, tuna fish is always a good item. Dry cereal. Now, there are lots of cereals out there that you can eat just as a snack in and of themselves. You don't need to have the milk. In this case, that's not going to be a good approach anyway. Vienna sausages, because you need protein too. These are always a very popular item, particularly among our linemen. So they always have snacks when they go out between meals when we're doing storm restoration because, well, they get meals delivered in the field typically, but they're working hard. So we know that these are a very popular item, as are, Slim Jims, beef jerky, smoked sausage, any kind of smoked meat that has a long shelf life. That'll be a good protein item for everyone in the family. But if you're somewhere where you can maybe have access to a microwave, so like I said, you could go to a hotel. Most hotel rooms have some kind of microwave these days. You might be able to have some soup. That would be a good thing to have plenty of on hand. And while this particular brand is a pop top, don't forget your can opener. You need to have a can opener so you can get into everything. So this is just a sampling of the types of foods that you want to have. You can applesauce, raisins, because you want to have some kind of fruit and vegetable. But you've got to think not in terms of fresh fruits, but things that will last and sustain you over a up to 7 day period. And then hopefully by that point, you're going to have a better sense of, do you need to prepare for longer? Or are you going to be able to go back to normal again, whether it's at home or you're returning from home? So now we thought about most members of the family. Let's not forget our pets. Pets are key. You can't leave them behind. You've got to plan for them as well. So you need water for them. You need food and snacks for them as well. In addition, younger children have different needs than older children. So if you've got babies, don't forget those diapers and the wipes and everything else that goes along with taking care of an infant or a newborn or a young toddler, their needs are different than a 5, 6, 7-year-old. You need to keep that in mind as well. One of the things that we often talk about is medicines and just other supplies. So we've talked about the food and the nourishment. Now let's talk about the supporting supplies. Medication is key. If you're on medications, you need to make sure that you've got enough medication to get you through the next couple of weeks at least. So if a storm's approaching, talk to your doctor, get a refill, get what you need ordered. If you are dependent on electricity for a medical device in your home, make sure you've got battery backup. Make sure you know where you can charge that battery. Make sure if you're on oxygen that you call your physician in advance to get what you need in advance to sustain you through a longer term outage. Because again, yes, we have a medical essential service, but that is not one that enables you to be guaranteed to be hooked up first. That's not how power is restored. It's restored from the most people on down the lines to individual homes. So you need to be able to have a plan. Are you going to have the supplies you need, or are you going to go somewhere where you can have the power to keep your equipment running? So those are things to think about as well as you put your plan together. And then your basic plans. You need to have candles. You need to have lanterns because, well, you want to have light. Flashlights, chargers for all your devices. Consider a solar charger if you're going to stay at home. Yes, you can get in the car and ride around potentially and charge your devices, but solar chargers would be good, or just the others. Again, if you're going to go elsewhere to ride out a storm and the restoration, but take your charging cords. So Kleenex, paper towels, toilet paper, hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, basic medications like ibuprofen and acetaminophen, and your contact solution if you wear contacts, all those things. And of course, a basic first aid kit is a must. You just never know what you're going to run into, and it's best to be prepared. So you got your food, your drinks, you got your supporting supplies. Now, the third component that I want to talk about, because of what we went through in the past year, the second ice storm in 7 years, is preparing for an outage in cold weather is very different than preparing for an outage in warm weather. Like it or not, it gets uncomfortable if the power's out and it's hot. We all know that. But to some degree, you know what to expect. Cold weather in the 20s and the 30s, like it was back in January of 2025 for a couple of days, and power's out for 36 hours, or could have been for more. Gratefully, it was only out for 36 hours on our system. That's a different beast to deal with. So everyone thinks that when it's cold, you need to take a big bulky coat and put it on. That is not the solution. That is not going to keep you warm. What you need are layers. You need to layer up your socks. You need to layer up your shirts. So like a t-shirt, a sweatshirt. Everyone likes to have a vest for the wintertime. Layer that up. If you've got fleece, fleece is another layer. And of course, blankets. Everybody likes a good fashionable snuggly blanket, whether it's seasonal or not. If this is your excuse to go get one or two to have on hand, by all means, go get them for your living room and for members of your family, because this is what's going to keep you warm when it's colder. You have to layer up. You got to keep moving too. But by having the layers, you create air barriers where the air can warm up between the layers, which will keep your core warm. If your core is warm, your extremities will stay warm. That's some of the key things to think about when it comes to cold weather. But we're at this point in the year where we're approaching peak hurricane season. And, so far so good. But from year to year, you don't know what the options are or what the possibilities are. And it's always better to be prepared when you don't have a storm in the forecast than when you do, because then you're limited in what you can find. So that's what you need to think about as you get your family emergency plan together and your to-go kits ready. So if you haven't, now's the time to put these items together. Obviously, winter stuff can wait until, but at least know what you want. But it's much easier to put things together and be ready in the event of a storm than to wait for one to be forecasted and then trying to put everything together. You can also get more resources on our website at oremc.com, and then there'll be a storm preparedness link that should be right along the bottom of your screen here. It'll give you links to other ideas, things to think about, some of the evacuation registries with both Georgia and Florida for our coastal communities. So again, now's the time to prepare. Be safe. I'm Michele Hutchins, your Director of Communications and Marketing here at Okefenokee REMC. See you next time.